Welcome, everybody. I'm Marian Wehak. I'm getting this event started tonight, and thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar entitled Waste Not, Sustainable Sources and Innovations for the Screen. Following our well-attended first webinar held on April 22nd, Earth Day, this is the second event in the National DGC's Art Department-focused Sustainability Project for 2024, with the overarching title of Waste Not, the Art of Circular Design. My name is Marian, as I said, Marian Wehak. I'm a production designer based in Toronto, and I'm the National Directors Guild of Canada's Art Department rep. I'm also an enthusiastic member of the DGC National Sustainability Committee, and I thank them, the National DGC, and Marwa Siem Abdou for producing this webinar series. Tonight, we are fortunate to have a fantastic panel of innovators and experts to talk about the systems and solutions they've devised to push the green dial of sustainability within our industry. It's a great pleasure that I welcome so many of you today, hopefully from across the geographical divide, and I look forward to introducing you to our panel in just a few minutes. First, just a few things worth mentioning. To allow the hour-long conversation to flow with ease, we'll reserve questions for the end. Yet as questions or comments come to mind, feel free to type these into the Q&A. And in about 70 minutes, we'll present your questions to our guests for the final 10 or 15 minutes or so, with the aim to wrap up at about the 90-minute mark. In the meantime, in the chat, we'd love to know where you're zooming in from, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves. This event's being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the DGC YouTube channel in the next few days. At the end of today's conversation, our tech champ, Giacomo Beltrami, will post the link to this channel in the chat. And for those who are interested, please take note that the link from our previous Earth Day webinar is also posted there. So just before we get the conversation started, please join me in honoring this request and acknowledgement. Wherever you are in Canada or elsewhere in the world, please take a moment to honor Indigenous peoples' long history of welcoming many nations to their beautiful territories. I'm grateful for all that we have, and I'm committed to upholding and uplifting the voices and values of our host nations. We also acknowledge those who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Our panelists will tell you in more detail about themselves and their innovations, but by way of a brief introduction, here are tonight's guests. Welcome, everyone. Hope the cameras are on. And your cameras on so people can see you. Yeah. Great. Welcome, everybody. So, Chris Barberg is the executive director and co-owner of EchoSet in Los Angeles, which has been in operation for 15 years. EchoSet works with content producers and advertising clients to implement sustainable production processes that mitigate physical waste impacts and incorporate circular economy principles. Los Angeles services include zero waste set solutions and waste diversion options to avoid landfill disposal for art department and scenic materials. As part of their business model, EchoSet also operates a reuse facility called Materials Oasis to recirculate useful production items back into the local community at no cost to the recipients, and provides other circular solutions including space rental, standard flat rentals, asset management, and non-union logistics. EchoSet is working toward the transition to a creative circular economy, a new business as usual, and a better behind the scenes. Welcome, Chris.
Hi.
Yeah. Kelsey Evans has always had a passion to keep the environment clean, and when she first started as a PA in film, she saw that there was a great need for recycling on set. Initially, she started bringing recycling home to recycle for the show she was working on, and that's dedication. But then it expanded to setting up recycling bins for other shows as well. This recycling program rapidly grew into Keep It Green Recycling and has now been running for over 14 years in Vancouver area. Keep It Green is always adjusting to the needs of the film industry and trying to improve their system. And their material reuse warehouse was specially designed to make it easier for the film industry to store and reuse prop set materials. This is a 2,600 square foot warehouse where any reusable materials are stored, and all items are made available for film productions, schools, community theater groups, artists, and charities for free. Welcome, Kelsey.
Thanks for having us.
Aaron Laszlo is founder of Can Do Green Technologies and the CEO of Urban Jacks. Quoting from a recent article in the DLA Piper newsletter entitled Giving New Life to Wood Waste, Urban Jacks transforms wood waste into sustainable lumber. Urban Jacks, a Vancouver-based startup, was born from a desire to make a positive impact during a time of global crisis. Its founders, driven by a can-do spirit, assembled a team of passionate innovators who shared a commitment to sustainability. Their research revealed that millions of tons of usable wood were being sent to landfills annually. This realization inspired Urban Jack's mission to give this wasted resource a new life and purpose. Welcome, Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. Currently, Kelly McCaig is the president and leader of Circular Partners and Viking Recycling. Circular Partners is a Canadian sustainability leader which operates the sample library, the reuse marketplace, and a clean material recovery facility under the umbrella of Viking Recycling. This is all in downtown Toronto. Their facility provides government, industry, and the community an environmental option for excess materials. With over 15 million pounds of materials diverted from Canadian landfills, the reliable services have adhered to a zero landfill policy since the company's inception 10 years ago. Managing materials to the highest and best use, they partner with contractors, designers, homeowners, makers, and the community to reuse material. Welcome, Kelly. Joe Manziak is a construction coordinator with IATSE 873 in Toronto, Ontario, and has been involved with scenery for many years. He has been a construction coordinator in the film and TV industry for about 30 years. And before that, he was involved with theater, and to this day, he still enjoys being pulled into a theater project. He loves series work as it demands full collaboration of everyone in the art department, and it is that collaboration that will be valuable as we work together to achieve more sustainable design build circularity in our industry. And finally, our moderator, welcome, Joe. You've been here many times, but thanks for coming back again. And finally, our moderator for tonight's conversation, Laura McNutt, has long been a fierce advocate for sustainability. Her formal education began in fine arts, leading to a Bachelor of Environmental Design studies and then a Master's of Architecture degree. Laura's work led to residence in Bermuda, Switzerland, USA, Finland, and several regions of Canada. Following 15 years practicing architecture abroad, Laura was introduced to the film industry on a bootstrap Nova Scotia TV pilot in 1996. She was smitten and has continued on and is currently chairing the DGC Maritime Sustainability Committee. In 2013, Laura founded her vintage and consignment business, King's Pier Curated Collections, which currently operates 2 locations in Halifax. Operating within the circular economy has provided valuable insight to the challenges faced when operating a business with unconventional and inconsistent supply chains. So thanks in advance to our entire panel for taking time to be with us tonight and to share your valuable information and insights with our attendees. I'll be back in about an hour's time to help with the Q&A, but now let's get this great conversation started. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Marian, and thanks indeed for organizing this wonderful group of very, very well-heeled panelists and across North America, which is really a real treat for us all. And in trying to determine how to convey some pretty complex concepts, I thought it might be valuable if you each want to flesh out any of that introduction as it applies to the film industry. I know that there will be some people tuning in who are not necessarily, they're more interested in the sustainability element than the film component. So if you don't mind, what I think might be, if we go through everyone but Joe will tie it up with the consumer of such products. But the 4 of you, Aaron, Kelly, Kelsey, and Kelly, we've got a lot of alliterated names here, so I'll try not to stumble too much here. And you've each adopted bespoken processes for recirculating building materials, and because the art department and the creative process in film is such a carbon heavy exercise, and you've all taken on the magnificent challenge of reducing carbon expense. So in order for us to appreciate what logistical challenges you have tried to resolve and have resolved. Perhaps if you each could, in summary version, explain how you would take an expired set and assess and process, and in doing so, share if some of these products might not be something that can actually be upcycled, recycled, or used in your organization. So if we start with Chris, and then we're going to go to Kelsey, and then Aaron and Kelly, and for the purpose of this, we're going to dumb it right down, and we're just going to have a 3-walled set, a standard flat, a simple 6-foot area rug, an upholstered chair, and curtains. So it's just a little bit of snippets of what might be kind of typical product at the end of a small production, whether it's a music video or a film set. So this little tiny sample, if you don't mind. Thank you. So Chris, we'll start with you, please.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that because a lot of that question will kind of come out in some of the slides that I shared. You'll see them depicted when I'm able to share more about EcoSet. But we would be delighted to intake something so simple as a 3-walled set with rugs and upholstery. Our EcoSet, we work in the film industry, everything from student to studio productions, and our job all day, every day, one of our jobs is to intake these used production materials if they have no other destination through the production process. So if the items aren't rentals, we will intake them at our reuse center called the Materials Oasis. And the standard set walls, if they're just 8-foot walls, will fly out the door probably as soon as they land that same day. Someone might take the window walls differently than the standard plain walls, but they will be used again by film students, indie films, and possibly theaters as well. So our warehouse, which is the reuse center, can absorb those materials very quickly and then also donate them very quickly as well. The furnishings and decor would also leave as quickly as they arrive. And we're open to the public for free materials like Kelsey. Everything that we manage is available for free to the public, industry, and community.
So with respect to accepting and processing those, would you document the product, or is it just a matter of having it on the floor and making sure it's relatively clean and safe?
Yeah, for us, it's tracking the weight, the diversion weight of what, if that was going to be bound for a dumpster, then we can call that a successful materials diversion and give the weight. And then the logistics of it, do we pick it up? Yes, if we're paid to. Do we take it in? Yes, if we're paid to. And it's a lot cheaper to drop it off to us as part of our department's wrap process. Essentially, they just push it off the truck, and our billing is a lot smaller than it would be if we had to dispatch the truck and the driver and the labor to pick that up. But go ahead.
So, yeah, and so the advantage to the art department would be that they would not have tipping fees. They would simply unload at your Oasis.
Yeah, and they can have even more like scrap materials and sheet plastic and anything, half cans of paint. All that would come with the load, and that would completely avoid 3-4 other stops or the dump, because we take anything and everything at the Materials Oasis.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. So now we're going to move on to Kelsey, and with a similar sort of inventory, how would you guys deal with that? And is it a similar sort of reception?
Yeah, same kind of thing. When we get first called, they're like, hey, we have this set. We try to stick with more standard flats, so nothing bigger than an 8x8. So like 4x14 is fine, or anything that is smaller, like just nothing bigger than 8x8. So usually sometimes they could be 10x10 or even larger. We like to hand bomb a lot of this stuff. So we try to stay smaller, but we do accept almost everything except for like sheets of glass. We stay away from really large things that we can't move around very easily. So if like the construction coordinator is like, hey, we have 4 walls that are super standard, a carpet, a chair, whatever, we'd be like totally fine, come and drop it off, super easy to find a home for. Usually we have so many people that want flats that as soon as they come, they're gone. We don't have them after that.
Great. So, and I didn't ask Chris this, but do production companies have to schedule a drop off?
Yeah, we request them to schedule drop-offs just so that we're ready and like we make sure that we have space because we work under like less than 3,000 square feet. So we just need to make sure we move things around and there's space and there's employees to help offload the trucks.
So you've got about 10% of the floor space that EcoSet in LA has, which is probably consistent with the percentage of material that could be circulated per capita.
Yeah, like right now we're taking in about 10,000 square feet this week. So we can actually move like anywhere from 2 to 3 5-ton trucks in a day.
Wow. Wow. Very good. Thank you. So with respect to things like the unwieldy large pieces, do they get diverted? Do you have recommendations for production or do they know what they're doing at that point?
Yeah. So when I have the conversation with the construction coordinator, like when I do mention that, like obviously we've got can-do urban jacks so that they can take all the wood frames and make new wood out of it. Anything that's like curved or not standard, I do talk with them and like, hey, like, do you think another film can use it? And if they don't think so, then like that's when I think the clean wood should go to urban jacks, and then anything that can't be reused is just unfortunately the 30-yard bin.
Yeah. No. Thank you so much. So, Erin, we're going to go on to you if you don't mind. And again, I know that you're distinctly different than sort of the full-on acceptance, but if you could walk us through how you would process or accept some of these components.
Sure. We all come together with a mindset to what can we begin to divert? And that's how we started, by looking at whether it's film, television, stage productions, to see whether it's cut off wood or at set strike. I'm going to reveal, what do you call it, the fourth wall here if I turn off my background here, and show you the pieces. And I'll do that after. But we transform, we take pieces of wood from a foot to 16 foot and give it a second life cycle. So from pieces like, I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but we take pieces of waste wood from this small size, from a foot and longer, 1x4, 2x4. It can be collapsed down, and we take it in bins, whether it's 12-yard, 20 yards, 30-yard bins, just depends on where you're at in the production. And we transform it into perfectly strong, straight lumber that I'll show you in a minute once I stop talking and get my virtual background taken care of. But until now, everything has gone into mixed waste, and we've offered a channel, which is a bin, to say, put your wood waste here instead of going to landfill or together with the rest of the mixed waste. Sometimes, if we're lucky, it gets diverted to clean wood burning or energy facilities. For now, it's just, hey, put it here instead of there, and you're going to save money on your tipping fees and benefit the planet substantially. And that's where we provide reports and information about what we do. But without us and people like you on the call, and Kelsey and EcoSet and others, all the sustainability coordinators and people like many of you on the call, think of GreenSpark. Mm-hmm. Without what you do, we can't improve the status quo. And that's what that can-do attitude is about. We measure everything that enters our facilities, and we can tell you the impact of each load, and it's significant. But we're just one piece of the puzzle, and the front lines are people like EcoSet and Kelsey and Kelly, who are out there engaging with the sets and serving them within the hour.
You're so right, Erin. And the collaboration, the coordination among the kind of sustainability pioneers who are really literally carving a path of diversion, of feasible ways to increase the life cycle of material. And now, is that a finger jointed piece? Yes. I don't know if you're muted, Aaron.
I'm muted, but normally my colleagues do that automatically. But what you're looking at here is 1x4 material. And if I bring it real close to the camera, you'll be able to see the finger joints. And
Yep.
each of these boards is on its second or third life cycle, whether it's a film, TV set, stage, mattress box springs, construction, deconstruction, demolition. We take pieces of wood and make new pieces like this. This is actually from a deconstructed home. Sorry for the mess. That's why we have the virtual background, but it's summer vacation, and I've got, well, now you've seen behind the walls, but ask any questions away. But really, it's Kelsey and Chris. You know, I think, am I right that Chris, you inspired Kelsey way back in the day?
We had the pleasure of working together, and Kelsey was able to visit us in LA and see how we had things laid out. So hopefully I would be part of inspiring Keep It Green and the materials aspect of that.
Yeah, I got to go and visit Chris, and it's just amazing work that her team is doing. And yeah, brought it back here to Vancouver, and I was like, let's do this. Like, I was so terrified because it's so expensive to have space and you're locked in for 5 years. And yeah, she totally inspired me to open up that sector. And you know what? It's working. It literally just pays for itself. But since we have Keep It Green, it keeps everything going. And yeah, I'm just happy that we can supply such a great thing to the industry and, you know, help out so many different organizations. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, I think you are really you've been designated as the sort of the junta, the female junta amongst many that is really leading the charge, and it is very inspiring, very, very inspiring. So with respect to the offcuts, Aaron, you reminded me that it's not unlike some of the sustainable lumber methods that have been employed by Northern Europe, like LVLs, or where they're just taking offcuts or what would have normally been remnants of production in the building trades. So it's so wonderful when something as indulgent, really, as the media industry, because our sets are ephemeral. They're not providing enduring shelter for people. They're not. Some would argue they're not essential. I mean, we in the industry might feel they're essential, but it's so wonderful to see such an impact with product, with all of the panelists, that is impacting all of us in the real world, not simply on set or during production. But that's really what is so important to convey, I think, on this panel and all the other efforts with Waste Not. And it's a little bit overwhelming how many webinars and tutorials are finding their way into the screens, and it's so important for us to help to coordinate the efforts and recognize the real success stories that you guys are presenting. So thank you. And again, now I'm going to go on to Kelly, who is going to flesh out yet another element of this, of how one can extend life cycles of real materials. Please, Kelly.
Hi, thanks for having me. Aaron, yeah, you definitely need to be unmuted there, buddy, because that's some cool stuff you're doing with the wood there. Can't wait to talk more about that. So on our side, although we've worked on film and theater projects, most of our work has been done in the built environment. We work with a lot of buildings and managing the construction, renovation, demolition waste from projects that are coming out of those buildings. But we do see a lot of similarities to the film industry, similar items, similar timelines, the planning that's required in managing these projects ahead of time. What's great about your example here, to build on what Chris said, is that you have a material list. That's a great start, you know, having the items listed. And one thing I think that the film industry could work towards is what we're seeing in the built environment is material passports. And so when you have all materials that are being built into the set or the building, in our case, when they have a passport and identification and a database is built of those material items, then bringing those materials out of a set is a lot easier when it comes to the planning stages and costing and timelines and scheduling. On buildings, we get a call from a contractor and they say, we've never heard from them, let's say, and they call us and say, hey, I've got some carpet. Can I bring it to you? Like, even before I go into the conversation, I know this is a no-go most likely, because the guy's got the carpet off the floor. He just read the specifications too late that carpet needs to be recycled, and he's not going to get paid unless the property manager sees a certificate for the carpet coming out of the building. And so now he's calling and saying, hey, I got to bring this to you. And we tell him how much it's going to be, and then we don't hear from him. And so, as the only people that are really managing these types of materials out of buildings in Canada, and doing a focus on some of these carbon intensive products, it's an easy mystery to solve. We know what happened to it, and there's a path then for the property manager to go about and find. But when we saw too much of that, what we did is we went out and we spoke to architects and designers. So in applying this to the film industry, talking to, I guess you guys could give the terminology better to me, but whoever's in charge of making the budget for the post-wrap sustainability plan, that we've gone out to the architects and designers. We've talked to them about sustainable building management, and we've asked them to put these materials into their project documents. So then when a property manager asks the architect and designer to build out their project, they include these type of sustainability actions in the project documents. So then when it comes to general contractors that are bidding on the project, which under that are, floor contractors and demo contractors, everybody knows that the property manager or the owner of the material already wants these sustainability measures built into the project. So now everybody's planning for that. Everyone's carrying the cost for that. And now people call us and say, hi, we see that this is required in the project. We give them a quote. Everyone can plan for it. The material stays out of the landfill, and the customer, the generator of the material, gets their wish. So although we haven't worked on a lot of film sets, I think like those are some of the things that we can add from the building industry that would help just grow this, become more mainstream in the film industry. I think the film industry has a lot of potential to drive more materials for landfill based on what I've heard and what I've seen. Planning is really big.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. And, sorry, did someone else have a question there with the other panelists? There's two things that you've raised that I think are really obviously critical to the film industry adopting more sustainable practices. I presume you were speaking about LEED certification and that there was obligations in the specifications, that kind of thing. That is to say, the building industry has some pretty robust sustainability obligations these days.
LEED is just one program, for better or for worse. But there are many programs like that. But I think it comes down to a lot to who we call the generator, who's managing the material, who owns the material. Is the material owned by a property manager like Cadillac Fairview, or is it owned by insurance company like Sun Life and it's their offices? Who's the owner of that material? And what I feel is maybe they use things like LEED as a guideline for them to try to match or meet. But a lot of them don't want to necessarily be specifically involved with the program or have a need for that. They're more relying on their own internal sustainability guidelines and measures that company has to operate by. And I'm sure Netflix and all the big studios, they have these sustainability guidelines in place. But what they don't have, and what we go out and educate a lot of these property managers and such, and these generators of these materials, is that they don't even know materials like ceiling tile and carpet and fabrics and doorknobs and things can be recycled or reused from their projects. So they've never included these in their specifications. And by going and educating them more on what they can do and letting them know that what the embodied carbon is and the impact reports that we can provide to them on the backside, that's what they're really interested in as well for their own ESG reporting. I think they see a lot of value in that. And then they start including those materials in their specifications.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think Joe will have some really wonderful insight in that with respect to what demands he typically will, or how he approaches finding appropriate materials, and how relevant that is depending on which of the studios is producing the picture. And beyond this intro, I'd love to talk about sort of the regulatory aspects and how that could actually benefit all of us if we do have more robust guidelines, policies, protocols, because currently they are so inconsistent, and they don't observe borders or boundaries, geographical or otherwise, so that if we have U.S. productions in Canada, those studios are coming with different criteria, and we may not be able to provide or support what their carbon demands are. So, very, very, very interesting conversation or topic, Kelly, and I thank you. I'm going to jump to Joe and see what Joe has to say about that. Are you there, Joe? Muted, maybe?
Yes, no, I was just just unmuting myself.
Sorry.
So first of all, I'm a construction coordinator with IATSE 873, which is a Toronto local, and we have had a long-standing environmental committee. There's been some real pioneers, not me. I'm people like Jackie Hemingway, Melissa Morgan, Mark Manchester. They've been doing this for a long time, and they've been either directly or indirectly responsible for a lot of positive gains that that have happened, and diversions, and they've dealt very strongly and well with like our food management, because when you get the size of crews that they've got a lot of really good, have made positive gains there. LED lights, generators, they've done a lot. But when I sat back and thought about it, it's like all what they've done, it pales in comparison with the damage that my department can do in a long-term on a long-term series. And it all started with, I calculated, and some people will have heard me say this before, but I calculated one show, and it was a big show in a long series, but I probably sent 160 metric tons to landfill on that show. And what made me sick about that is, at that time, I was very busy in the city, and there's like 39 projects going on in the city. So I thought, even if you multiply that, even if people were less than me. So that's what really kickstarted me into thinking like the whole circularity thing. And when I first started in this business, which was a while ago, I joke sometimes when I say back when we did Ben-Hur, but it's been a while. But when I first started, there was what we called the studio system, which we sort of had mimicked from LA, where there's always flats. We kept flats, windows, doors, and when something came down from the art department, we'd send somebody in and say, "I give me this many 4x10s, this many 3x10 flats, or whatever, and this door, and then we'd only end up making a few custom flats." Over the years, we got away from that. I think largely, I think it's been a combination of maybe our department thinking they wanted just something entirely new or couldn't see reusing stuff. A combination of real estate got more expensive, so storage is a big problem, and that's one of my biggest problems is storage. And on a show I did recently, I was able to with just two 40-yard containers, like really cut back like significantly, like 30% type of from, diverting things from landfill with just two containers, because that's all they would get for me. And as a result, there's been a panel here in Toronto. Marion's on it, Zena Harris, a few other people, and we're trying to coerce, get a business going where, much like Kelsey's got going in Vancouver and Chris in LA, where we can bring when a show goes down, we can bring the flats and other scenic pieces to a warehouse, and so that the next show starting up has an advantage of grabbing those. Part of I think part of the problem with me is up until now, I'm working with the help of Marion Wehack. I'm keeping better track of this now, much better data. So I think I'll be able to present a business case to producers from now on, because so much of this will come down, as Kelly has said, Aaron has said, we got to build this in from day one. This has to be budgeted in right from the start. And I think when we show the producers that this, in fact, is actually not costing it, I'm saving disposal fees, I'm saving this, then I think that it will be a much more stronger, independent, stronger feedback and support from the productions. So no, you go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, Joe. No, I think we're also painfully aware of just it. We're it's so obvious to any of us who have really dug underneath that sort of that superficial layer that it doesn't take much to justify sustainability as a feasible model, and unfortunately, it does require accumulating real data, and that's where the carbon calculator and the logistics of documenting the carbon offsets is going to be so effective and valuable in establishing and shifting so that there's more demand for minimized carbon expense, rather than us on the other end of that equation. No, I think it's an incredibly valuable perspective, and thank you. Really, it's so important, particularly when it's construction coordinators who have their boots on the ground and have such insight and perspective. And it's so important that we hear from you and help prop your perspective.
Well, and if I may say, panels like this are priceless, because out of this panel, so I've had a very hard time getting someone to take wood that has fasteners in it, but Aaron takes wood that has fasteners in it. So I tried to contact him on Friday and I missed, but in the meantime, I've talked to Kelly, and anyways, I think we're gonna try and get something similar set up here in Ontario, because that's huge. That's a lot of most of my wood that I want to get rid of. If it's not flat stocks stock flats that I can pass on to somebody, a lot of it's gonna have fasteners in it. It just is, and I've tried to source that out in Ontario, and I have not been successful. So just
We
the
welcome it. We
contact,
take care of it.
yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah, just the contacts from this panel alone, I think we can start to make a lot of progress here in Toronto.
Excellent. Yeah. Again, as you've identified, communicating, networking, joining the dots, connecting the dots, not just strictly in the film industry, but also in the arm's length support networks, because so many of the real world materials that are involved and incorporated in the art department, and the art department is only second to transport and energy expense for carbon use. So it really is so important that we try to catch up, because it's I love that your reference to the studio system, and that we're getting back to really more rudimentary, more sensible supply and demand. ironically, rather than more sophisticated. We just need to appreciate materials a little more than we have been over the past few decades. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions that follow up on that whole idea of accepting materials and logistically trying to determine how to reuse them. And this is for all the panel and whoever feels this applies, is the idea of thus far, except, well, the finger joints and Kelly with carpet and ceiling tiles, modularity, like the idea of accepting materials as is, where is, and just putting them in a kind of the oasis and waiting for the right people to take it. It's clear that it doesn't seem to be an issue with flats because there appears to be more demand than supply, or at least there is a balanced supply and demand. But other things that might need to be broken down and into parts, is it feasible to harvest elements from sets and process them in a little more with a little more manpower investment? Is that something that I suspect that's Chris and Kelsey mostly doing that kind of work.
I can speak to that because we do that all day, every day. It's baked into my in-house labor, is that we're going to have to dismantle, disassemble, and part things down to be more donatable and desirable. Simply because a lot of film students will show up with the smallest U-Haul that exists and try to get a 10 by 12 in that U-Haul. It's not going to work. So one other solution that we have, and I'm going to put it in the chat, we started a website for some of the larger, more challenging materials, so that we could post those online and have people see the dimensions and see someone standing next to it and just see how big it is. And so we started a materials.ecoset.la is our online version of our donation process. Not everything that we give away is listed on that site. That would be impossible, but it really helps us to circulate some of the more challenging builds. So we really can say yes to some of the larger scenery that comes in on 45-foot lowboy trailers and is 12 feet tall, and double-sided or huge amounts of trim and paneling. We can say yes to it, and either we try to donate it through the website and get someone else to say yes to it as is, or we will break it down on one of our work days or part of our labor team responsibilities as part of one of our other jobs, is just making things smaller and more bite-sized pieces. And then if we need to get down to just stick wood and dimensional lumber and sheets, we will do that as well. And that's, pulling out the nails and the staples and having a little bit more layer of disassembly involved. But once we do that, the things actually go away as their base resources.
Excellent.
Yeah, Cubic Green, we do the same thing, but we've got now partnered with Urban Jacks that we can send stuff like that to them before it even comes to Cubic Green. But we also get like a lot of set deck and props items that sometimes that we do have to break down. Like maybe if it's just not gonna find a home, like maybe take apart the metals, the textiles, if there's rigid plastic that needs to be recycled. So like we'll go through everything, and like if it's not gonna find a home, then we properly recycle it. So it's just part of the cost of dropping off and part of the labor. Like usually we have about 2 to 3 people like in the material reuse, moving things, cleaning things, putting things together, taking things apart. So like even like an office chair, we might get 10 office chairs and only like 2 of them are still good. So like at that point, we would take them apart and recycle the components.
Excellent. Thank you. Aaron, maybe you have something to contribute as well with respect to, obviously you always have something to contribute, but with respect to whether there's anything more in terms of breaking down, because you're already starting with offcuts.
When I speak to our production guys, we handle the removals. Yeah, tell your carps, instead of putting A and K staples every 5 centimeters, 10 centimeters is good, because each one is pulled by hand. Less glue on some of the corners, but these little bits and pieces are the cornerstones. The first step is getting on a call like this with inspiration, and then coming together. can do. It's about what can we do? What can you do? And it all comes down to measuring the status quo. What's the baseline today? And how do we not shame anybody for being here? To say, great, here's another avenue we can pursue and plan for it. And it's a really, really nice segue onto that sort of policy piece, because we have to do while industry catches up. I know Zena in the Q&A can probably speak to the California Green Building and the certification, the programs, the lead points that come with using our products all have to be understood by more than just the sustainability people. You know, because there's so much materials being handled. So it's about inspiring and recognizing those people. Perhaps each production, there's 4 or 5 people that Kelsey and probably Chris and others, Kelly, you know by name. And so get to know those people, and how do we turn them into champions? That's the real action point. What's the call to action? Is do something.
Yeah, excellent. And again, identifying that from day one, how components are constructed on site. And Joe, I'm sure, can speak to this, that if fewer staples are used, or a recyclable or organic glue can be used that allows more reuse, all those things. It's just a matter, it's information, it's education, it's coordination, it's all of those things. So thank you, Aaron. That's really particularly valuable. Kelly, sorry, I would love to hear from you too on this.
Yeah, and I apologize ahead of time. We build a lot of shame into our sales planning. We, you know, I'm not one for those who aren't buying into climate change. So we talk to our clients about how they can always do better, and sometimes, yes, it is for the worse. But so Aaron, your positivity, we like that rubbing off. As far as this question with modularity, it's big emergence in the built environment. Lot of Northern European countries, Denmark is a big leader, the Netherlands, they build complete buildings out of modular pieces. And those pieces are then already scheduled way ahead for the use in the next building, long before the building is even planned to be disassembled. And they know exactly what they're getting. They've worked with these pieces before. I guess that's why they invented Lego over there in Denmark, because it's a little bit like that. They just are doing that in a bigger way, but you know, they're prioritizing sustainability on that forefront. But yes, very big. I think there is a need and some space for that. Everything can't be, you know, modular, but some modularity, especially for these flats that you guys have, and reusing those seems to be one of the most easy things to reuse. And why? It's because there's a lot of modularity to those, I assume.
Thank you, Kelly. So Joe, obviously you would have the perspective on the ground with respect to whether modularity is something that the production designers, art directors allow for, and that you can help nudge and or do. I'm presuming that that's a good thing.
Yes, I think more and more designers are thinking this way. And I've worked with one in particular who was very good at this. Actually two in particular that I've worked with recently that have been very good at this. We hung our ceilings so that they could stay, and so that was a constant. And then we would move flats in and out. We would build with modularity in mind, and we would then we could change the room very quickly, like very quickly. And you would not recognize it. You know, you would not recognize it from the room before. A couple issues with that is you need some space to store stuff in between. Again, it comes down to real estate. So the one show I talked about was up at Downsview, the old military plant here in Toronto, and we had an abundance of space. So we could literally build a set without even building a flat. We could put a set together, I should say, without even building a flat. So we used modularity a lot for the last 4 seasons of Suits. our our construction costs were pretty reasonable for the type of sets that we put out because we were reusing a lot of the windows and doors and flats. With that, you need buy-in from the scenics because they can't plaster. Scenics love to, they call it a brown coat. They got several coats of plaster they put on to help get the richness of the walls. And at some point, you got to work with them and say, I just can't have any more plaster because then what happens when you break the seams, you're dealing with like a half-inch of plaster and the walls don't go back together. And then it's an issue. And it's also an issue in trying to recycle that flat to somebody else because it's now got like a half an inch of plaster on it. So you need buy-in from that. You need buy-in from the producers for space. But more and more people are thinking like this, and it's a good sign. And it's a good sign. And I think it is also, they're also realizing that it is a savings on the budget.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. And with respect to the texture, the surface, I mean, film is, I mean, we're master illusionists, and the idea of creating these different spaces, environments with a suspended ceiling and modifying the walls with with magic is, I mean, that's what we all love to do. So it's the more these challenges can provide solutions for minimizing carbon expense and the carbon footprint, we're all winning. And again, it's all about really just connecting all of these dots because I think there's a lot of appetite for it, and it's a matter of illuminating the possibilities. And I'm just looking at the time; it's 8:23 already, and I know that at 8:30 we're going to be moving into a demonstration of the carbon calculator.
You
So I
can
don't
have a
know if
little
we-
more time. I think we'll do it at 7:40. We can move into that.
Okay.
Okay.
Very, very good. Thank you, Marion. I'd love to talk a little bit about regulations, regulatory opportunities, not policing so much as um, universal policy and protocols that we vested parties can help formulate and encourage, so that when LA productions come up to Nova Scotia or Toronto or Vancouver, that there are some consistencies and we don't have to start at scratch each time. And that, to Aaron's point, that construction coordinators know what is best for creating connections on flats, and so that we can create finger joint lengths of lumber from offcuts and all of these things that are happening in different parts of North America and obviously the world, that we can start to allow for some more universality. I know here in Atlantic Canada, we are embarrassingly and woefully behind in so much of this. And I know there's a lot of people that really want to make positive change. It's a little overwhelming, and we don't have quite the density of productions and places. But that's just an excuse, quite frankly. I think every region can make a difference. So I'd love if anyone has an opinion about regulations and/or their own experience with existing regulations.
I have something to say. Not maybe about regulations, but what I find super helpful is like the productions hiring companies like say Green Spark Group, which have employees all over the place. So maybe New York, Toronto. So I'll get an email like, hey, can you service Toronto or help us? Do you know this? And I'll be like, go see Green Spark Group. They have people there on the floor. They already know everybody. They can help you put everything into place super easy. Same in New York. Hey, yeah, contact Green Spark Group. They can help your production go, and they have all the contacts. They know who to use, and it's super easy. So that's super helpful. And like having them here on productions, like, yeah, it just makes my job a lot easier too.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And, I think obviously having sustainability coordinators, sustainability council, sustainability someone responsible for sustainability in a production is really quite essential. And I think we have quite a ways to go, at least in our region, to not enforce it, but to facilitate it, and to again talking about providing the right analytics that demonstrate it's not just feasible, it's it's a cost savings to introduce sustainability. And many of us know that already, but demonstrating it isn't necessarily all that easy, because we are disrupting linear chains of supply, and by introducing circularity and upcycling, recycling, all of this, it really is they are shifts, and as we know, we humans don't necessarily love to be told to shift the ways of how we do things.
But does a disruption have to be negative? I think, with positive disruption and, challenging that linear economy as we do, so many of us, I'm looking at the chat and I, recognize so many faces where a couple of years ago, it wasn't that long ago that I was on the other side, interested to see how quickly we could all lock arms and create those circular economies. And the truth is that circular economy on its own doesn't make unit economic sense. But when we all come together and say, here's that status quo that we measure, then it's about improving. And policy, whether it's a jurisdiction, a county, or a city, or a municipality, there has to be some uniformity. And so groups, whether it's IATSE or whichever local, have to come up with a generally understood set of principles. And once that process goes, maybe it takes 18 months, maybe it takes 36 months, we can all agree towards that common target. But we found policy-wise that we try to support it in every way. However, the influence is too frustrating for me personally as a founder to be patient upon. And so it takes groups like this. The Directors Guild of Canada, we actually met through the Dutch Canadian Circular Economy Association a year ago. Because it was about groups that want to improve the status quo. So I don't think any of us should feel like we're not doing enough, because having this call, having a discussion about policy, we can then trigger the Kellys or the Joes or Laura, anyone, or any, Marion, we can trigger you to go to your local film commissioner and say, right, what are you doing about this? In my case, I'm interested in recycling. In others, it might be interested in other pieces, but identifying those people and saying, all right, let's go. And, what do you others think?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to add there. To build on what you're saying, Aaron, I think coming together as a united front is very important when speaking with government, because they need to try to please as many people as possible and having them to make decisions. They never want to have egg on their face. They want to have things working out and them stay popular and stay in power. So pleasing as many as possible, coming from getting as many people together and organizations, stakeholders, when coming forth with policy and being clear of policy suggestions and changes is important. We've been involved again in the built environment on policy changes, both nationally, provincially, and we're working on now with a Sustainable Toronto Film Group that we're working together to try to implement some policy changes on the municipal level here in Toronto as well. But what we found out is, yes, Aaron, like you said, it takes time. It's very frustrating. Some of the projects that we worked on with the government, we've only had changed after 8 years of working with them. We just recently had the National Research Council update the National Master Specification on the recycling and reuse of materials coming out of government buildings. And it took so long, and it feels good though when you do finally accomplish these things. It's hard when governments are changing all the time and one government wants one thing and the next wants the next. But just being able to come together, I think, and wait that patience out and stick to it will get you there eventually, hopefully, with some of the policy changes we need before it has to be implemented otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, Aaron, disrupting, I certainly wasn't using that as a negative term, but rather disrupting the status quo, shaking it up and restoring some sensible strategies. Again, it's kind of going back to the studio system. It's like why did so much of this stuff end up in the bin in the first place? So I think, again, it really just needs an adjustment of our collective perspective. So we're at 8:30. I'm not sure I want to sort of get too deep in the weeds of another subject, but
there's quite a few questions that I think will kind of flush out some of the conversation. So maybe what I'll do, I'm just going to come on now, so I'm not this voice from the back room there. But so yeah, there's quite a few questions I think will sort of help, again, flesh out what has already been discussed. But before we go into the Q&A thing, I just wanted to bring in Maurice Abdu, who has helped develop the art department material emissions calculator with the DGC and with Lily Lee from Viking Recycling. And it's a tool that will be available very soon on the DGC Green website for people to actually figure out what the carbon the content is of any of your materials. So I'll let Marwa give a quick demo of it, and then we'll come back to the Q&As. But panel, please stay around because we want you to be here for Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you, Marion, and hi, everyone. So I'm going to just walk you through this tool that we've developed. It'll be available this week for anyone to use. So it's on our website, dgcgreen.ca, and I'll share the link in the chat right after. I do want to thank Kelly and Lily for being very supportive and helping us work through all the technicalities in order to put together this tool. I learned a lot in the process, but a big thing was to understand that the emissions factor is critical when you're building a set, and understanding the impact of certain materials and the outcome of using certain materials is important when you're trying to implement sustainable practices on a production. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly. Can I get a thumbs up if everyone can see it? Perfect. So this is, if you go on dgcgreen.ca, this is one of two calculators that we have, and this is the most recent one. So what you can do, what Viking Recycling and Kelly's team did was they provided us with the carbon emissions based on weight and volume for some of the materials. We generated a list of materials, and they were able to help us determine the carbon emissions factor per pound or per square meters for each material. So as you can see here, the calculator at the top here, it's kind of it's anchored, but it would give you the results in this section on the right. And all the way down, you can access different categories of materials. If ever anyone has any suggestions or any items that they believe should be added to this list, we're also happy to get your suggestions. We did create what we thought was the base list of materials, but obviously this is something we can continue to update and change accordingly. So if you go, for example, under plastic, it gives you a list of all the different materials, some broken down by thickness as well. Metal, you'll get these. Glass, you get a lot of the glass items, and obviously there's a thickness breakdown. All of these items are broken down, obviously, by the different materials that fall into that category. So for instance, if we go into here and choose, for example, 4 millimeters thick, and then, so it automatically displays, obviously, the volume or the weight. So go to metal, aluminum fasteners. We'll do 3 pounds. Select laminated glass. Let's go into wood, for example, and do softwood lumber and put it by weight. And let's put white glue just to pick something, and we choose it in gallons. And so obviously you can select as many things that you'd like, and depending on what you have on your set, you can select it here. And what it does, that it gives you up at the top the carbon emissions, the total carbon emissions resulting from those materials. So this does one of two things. Obviously, I'll share the link in the chat just so everyone can try to use it. If you have any feedback, you're more than welcome to share it with us. The purpose is to give users an idea of what that looks like. What we want to do as well in the future is create sort of equivalence in layman terms. So what that looks like in terms of gas, for example, or in terms of, wasted, some produced waste. So we want to be able to give users an idea of visually what that looks like, or quantify what those carbon emissions look like, so they understand the impact. But the purpose is to have users understand the alternative, some of these materials, or perhaps ways that these materials can be reused or avoided altogether. And so this is obviously a starting point, but I believe it's a good starting point because now if someone's working on a set, they can build a case, right? They can explain why certain things can't be used. They can bring these numbers when they're presenting their case and explain why there should be alternatives or why there shouldn't be some items used on set. And so hopefully this can overall provide direction when it comes to building more sustainable sets, and obviously help, not just the art department, but production managers and, those who work on these productions to make better and more environmentally focused decisions. I'm happy to answer any questions if you can put them in the chat. But yes, once again, thank you to Kelly and to Lily for being extremely helpful and very supportive in helping us put together this tool.
Thanks, Marwa. And I think there are a few questions, but I don't want to, I think just before you go away, there's going to be a launch of this, is that not correct, in the coming week? So
yeah, this week,
a more drill down kind of presentation. Yes. When will that be?
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay. How do people get the link?
So I put the link, I pasted the link in the chat. It's
for the presentation?
Sorry?
For the presentation, not just the calculator itself, but. Yeah,
the demo video will go up. Put a demo video up. We're also probably going to hold an event where we can walk people through the tool. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me as well. So, but tomorrow morning, it'll all be available.
Okay, great. So thanks, Marwa. That's fantastic. And I think we'll go back to the panel and the questions that have been piling up through the past hour. Let's see, I'll go back to the beginning. Okay, there was a question. I kind of answered it online, but I'll throw it out there again anyway, in case you guys have anything to add to it. Laura Bresnahan asks, how are these companies, you guys, making any money? Do they sell some of their product? So you might want to just all kind of go around the room and just give a quick answer to that, because I know obviously you are making money, but anyways, just I'll let you guys answer that.
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure, Chris. Yeah, sorry, start with Chris, I guess. Sure.
We have to be making money or I wouldn't be here. We're not a nonprofit, so we are for profit. We've made it 15 years in business. And the way we make money is everything is a billable service. So our zero waste services on commercial sets is billable as like another department with equipment and labor. And then all of our materials diversion services are billable based on volume. And then we do monetize standard flats. Back to the modular question, we rent flats, jacks, and sandbags because that's something students and indies will always be willing to pay for. And those are the first things to leave when they come in. So we figured we should have a rental program for those. And it's been very successful for low budget as is used rentals. And then we also can rent space, and we can rent or we have on-demand logistics like transportation and labor and support services for our department. So we bill for everything we do except giving away free materials, but we consider that a loss leader as part of our business model.
Yeah, same with us. We bill for everything we do. Anything that comes into our warehouse for reuse, we charge. So I believe that everyone should be responsible for their waste. So every service that we do, we bill for, and then just give everything in the material reuse away for free. Sometimes we might pull a couple objects and keep them for different productions, but yeah, we have to charge to keep us going, and we're not a nonprofit as well.
Sorry, can I follow that up, Kelsey? Oops. Can you hear me, Kelsey?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. With respect to that, is that like the equivalent of a tipping fee then? So when a production does bring their product, there is the materials are charged. The production company is charged for the materials to drop them off.
Yes. Yeah. So we charge per truck size. So like if they only drop off a quarter of a 5-ton, that's all they're going to get charged for. So we do it by the volume with that. We also kind of keep track by volume instead of weight. Chris does weight from EcoSet. I think I would like to get into weight one day, but right now we're just doing it by the volume. So that's how they get charged.
And sorry, you and Chris, if you don't mind, are they comparable? Like the base of the value, is it comparable to your relative tipping fees at diversion centers in your region?
For us, we made it cheaper to drop off than it is to throw it all into a 30-yard bin.
Perfect. Thank you.
For us, waste is so cheap in LA, and so we can't beat the bin price, but we can make it cheaper to drop off to us than if we were to pick up. So it's pretty close to getting a 3-yard dumpster this dropping off the same volume to us. What we can't beat is when trucks drive to a dump and just push it off for, I don't know if it's $75 a ton or something like that. We can't compete with dump sites.
Yeah, who can compete with that, really?
Yeah.
Nobody can compete with that. And like, I think if we got to one of the questions about what our governments can do for us, imagine a world where like the set landfill tipping rate was like 10 times the amount of it is now. And what that would do to people's actions and how they would change when they think about throwing something out, think about buying something, even buying it at the start, they would think, okay, eventually this is a heavy thing. I'm going to have to throw this out and I'm going to get charged for this, a big weight. If that was different, then right away we would tip everything on the head. So we're like the rest of you. We charge a tipping fee at the front gate for our materials. Our fee is higher than the landfill. We're trying to push that up. People don't use our services. They can go to the landfill, I guess. We're not capturing as much of the material, but we have a zero landfill policy, so I don't want their waste anyways. We only accept materials that we know we have a solution to reuse or recycle. But definitely you need to be pushing those landfill rates up in all jurisdictions to ensure behavior change actually has some teeth.
Kelly's right. I mean, the extended producer responsibility aspect, when you look at the overall circular economy, is really important. And when it comes to wood and disposal, we offer an avenue that is less expensive, but we still have to process it. And when you look towards EPR, you look towards other jurisdictions where policies, our team, yes, you spoke about Northern Europe. Our team is based in Helsinki, Denmark, and Vancouver, because if you look what others are doing, all of the waste is segregated by metals, by plastics, because they pay a fortune for it. It's much cheaper than having to pay at the landfill for them to process it. So if we're looking 5-10 years out, it really is as simple as looking to other areas and seeing what innovative solutions they have, whether it's in Japan, who is known for not wasting, or in Australia, in UK. I don't have to name jurisdictions, but throughout Northern Europe, as referenced earlier, it's too cheap to throw it away. Los Angeles is, if it is $75 a ton or less, that's too cheap. But we can influence that. We can only offer a channel to do it better and cheaper.
Thank you.
Cheaper maybe at the cost of the planet.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
Sorry, Marianne.
No, just ready we'll go on to the next question. Diane Wheeler asks, on all fronts, materials use, reuse to power and other equipment rentals to operations to all aspects of production. Are there reports talking about cost savings to productions and making sustainable choices in the run of a show or film? We're talking about the business cases. So anyway, jump in. You guys can, unless Laura, you want to navigate, but that's the question.
Yeah, and we kind of touched on it, but I think what we've all recognized is that we really do need clear analytics that we can present to productions that demonstrate the feasibility. And so things like this carbon calculator will be incredibly valuable because they'll quickly allow us to demonstrate, well, if you choose that product and it comes from circular economy, et cetera. So yeah, Aaron's just put up a diversion report. Sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just putting it up here that we all gather the information, and when you send it all together and put it out there, this is one small bin. I think it was even a dump truck load, and that represents thousands of kilometers. So everyone's buying offsets, and policy says we're trying to accomplish something. You just have to measure where you're at. There's plenty of calculators that we're starting to learn about, and this forum is what we're talking about. This is one example, but if you look in Kelsey's slide, she has her version, and I think all of us have produced one report or another. If you all like, if you put up what you've got, I don't know, Kelly or Kelsey or Chris, what your diversion report looks like, and then is that something that a policy can, the DGC sustainability say, hey, what does our, call it an API, an application protocol? How can we feed information? Give it to us. We'll process it and publish it out for you. But if you don't know where you are, how can you know where you're going or where you've been?
And to add to that too, like with all our reports, so like Urban's, ours, people like as Green Spark Group will collect all of it and create a report for the studio so that they can see cost savings and all what they have done for the production. So, which is kind of useful.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's also, and this may have been what Diane was asking too, is, I mean, that is a report for the environment, but I think you can make a dollar business case for what you save for production dollars too. And that's what I'm working on. I can show them that by reusing this or by diverting that, as they're actually saving money. Never mind the environment for a minute here, that I think I can make a business case that this is just better business.
Well, and I think that's producers. That's what they're interested in. The bottom line is how do we make this film, and can we save money? If we demonstrate that with analytics, like the carbon calculator is just one of those elements of determining the carbon expense, but the life cycle versus a price tag are two different barometers, and determining how to convince producers that it's, as you say, Joe, it's not just feasible, it's actually you're saving money. It's a win-win on every front. And it's a matter of coordinating all of these different metrics and logistics to so that policies are in place that are solutions rather than all of the sort of experimental methods in different parts of the world. And all you pioneers developing these things, there needs to be more fluid connecting of the dots.
There's a question here that's there's probably not a firm answer, but from Valerie Kalin. Whether the built environment or studio environment, I wish I knew more about the responsible, feasible recycling, upcycling of metals. And I'll just add to that my own kind of inquiry. It's kind of a different question, but also just the responsibility of the giveaway stuff. Like when you give away stuff for free, I'm just packing this on to there. So this is specifically about the metals, the metal portion, but then also what about the free stuff that gives away? Is there any kind of requisite or ask that people deal with that responsibility after they receive the free stuff?
Well, I can speak. Well, in terms of metal, virtually pretty much all my metal gets recycled. That's one particular portion of our side of the business that's easy to deal with. There's a lot of metal recyclers, and but in terms of giveaways, that's again, I mean, there's business case to be made for that, is because I'm saving the dumping fees. And just on a note there, when I was talking about the show where probably 150 metric tons went to the dumps, that probably was $50,000 in tipping fees. Pretty close to that. I'm rounding that out. So imagine sending that money to Kelsey and Chris and reuse or Kelly and you know what I mean? And reusing that. So there's definitely, by even just giving stuff away, there's money to be, or there's money that's saved.
Also, we got table stands just recently, or we get metal filing cabinets. So the metal stands for tables and stuff like that. We are very particular on who takes our metal stuff. Like we will see who it is if it's not a film industry, because we don't want a scrap metaler just come and take all our stuff and scrap metal it. So we actually have a form for them to sign saying this isn't for resale, it's for reuse. If you're done with it, please give it away for free or bring it back. So we do have a little form for them to sign when they do come in and take our stuff.
Does anyone else? Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Sorry, Marion. Yeah, no, to your point, and to further to Kelsey, the idea of accepting responsibility for all materials once they cross that threshold, whether it's into a sound stage or on a building site, is it's all about, you know, having that conscious decision about accepting that responsibility and knowing that it has a life cycle. And if it's something that we're using for the finite ephemeral film set, before we even consume that or buy it or acquire it, we should have that business plan of where is that going to go when it's expired on our set. And I know that this is something that comes up in previous webinars and in the whole circular economy thing. How do we sustain that life cycle as long as possible, equitably? And I think there are so many, it shouldn't be about trying to encourage or there's no facade here. There are business cases to be made that everyone wins. So it's just a matter of everyone putting all of the positive data and analytics on the table. And there's many that already have. And it's really a matter of sharing that, coordinating, collaborating. And Kelsey, I love the idea of that, almost like a contract where it's almost like you're adopting a pet, but it's an inanimate object, but it has value. So despite the fact that it's free, it still has inherent value. And that's the issue with diminishing a price tag, is that then people think, oh, well, it was free, so it doesn't matter. When in fact, it matters more, particularly if it's something that has been rescued from an obsolete site or set in our case. So yeah, no, I very important part of the equation.
Yeah, and you know, I'm seeing like a lot of, especially this year, is sharing of items. So like the studios are chatting with each other, like, hey, I'm done. Does anybody want this before, hey, it goes to Keep It Green, which is great. So it's like flats, it's set deck stuff, it's props, it's costumes. So it is kind of like going around in a circle. And then like even we see stuff multiple times, not just once. Like we'll see pews a few times. We'll see different objects that come in and I'm like, oh, we've had this here before. So we also talk with the productions, like when they do come and take all the stuff for free, it's like a 5-ton worth of stuff, bring it back. And then, or like if you want us to charge you to take it and then you just bring it back for free, then let's do that. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of things going around in circles, which is great.
Which is, sorry, one more point is the absolute essential agility that you guys have all demonstrated is so impressive. And I just want to take this opportunity. I feel real privileged to have been moderating or discussing with you all, and your innovations and your agility is really impressive, all of you, and thank you.
There's a few questions here related back to the calculator, but it kind of weaves into what you've been talking about. And the first one, I'll ask them both at the same time. One's from Todd Moore. And does the DGC materials calculator use a cradle to grave model, which has resource extraction to end-of-life emissions? And then kind of dovetailing to that, does this carbon calculator tool, the one that Marwa demonstrated, behave like the PGA Green Toolkit carbon calculators, the Peach, the Pear, Plum calculators? And again, we don't want to get into a deep dive back to the calculator, but just maybe if any of you are familiar with using the Peach, the Pear, the Plum, and whether Marwa, you want to jump in and just sort of, or maybe you can do it, Kelly, too, just clarify the distinction. This calculator, materials calculator, is not the same. It's a bit more drilled down, I think. That's my take on it. But anyway, if you just want to respond to the cradle to grave idea, and also the whether this new calculator we're presenting is different, what the basic differences between the Peach and the Pear, etc.
I'm guessing you're asking me. I'm not familiar with a bunch of the other calculators that were mentioned, but we've been building our item list for a few years now of different materials. And when DGC approached us, some of the materials we had, some of the materials we had to do further research on, and the emissions that we covered were stages A1 to A3 of the material life cycle analysis. This includes the extraction and processing raw materials, the transportation of raw materials to the site, and the manufacturing of the product.
So I don't know if that answers some of the questions out there. But tune in. I tune in for the demo tomorrow to find out more about the specifics of the material calculator that we talked about earlier. I'm just going to go on to, there's a few comments that were kind of in the chat, but they're kind of questions. Okay, Karen Stewart, a production designer in LA. Hi, Karen. I would love to see that calculator include items that have been shared, given away, or reused. How could this become a positive carbon impact? And can it be measurable? And that's something that we've talked about in terms of the overview. Like once articles start getting reused over and over again, and I think it is something that Mauro we've talked about putting into the calculator eventually, so that those kind of shared items you can see. Oh, I've saved this much carbon by using these items. That kind of quotient. And yeah, so there's that. And
for those of you that are interested in combined calculators, we are working towards that. That's that can-do part about what we do, which is that baseline. So for those of you that want to learn what we're doing with architects, for example, we're also doing with film and television, that we can have a separate working, perhaps panel or discussion on that. So if you have calculators or tools that you like, bring them forward, and we can also combine them together with some other friends on the call, because I'm recognizing that a lot of people are learning for the first time that there are others out there. So now we know.
a few other questions. I'm going back and forth between the questions in the chat things. These questions seem to be coming into the chat. Yeah, so Leslie Harkness, it's more to Kelly about your carpets, I think. Separately, is there any incentive for set designers to choose healthier materials chemical-wise? For example, without PFAs, such as paint repellents or less toxic paint or green fabric, How is the incentive move from fast and cheap to healthy cycle of life? Well, that's an ongoing question. I guess anyone can jump into that question, because it's definitely it's an incentive, but not like a regulated incentive.
I'd love to step on that for a minute. It just with respect to the idea of fast fashion, fast production, all of those things that simply a price tag is used as the metric, and we need to account for the life cycle. We need to account for the manufacturing, and as Kelly has alluded to earlier, it's the embodiment, the carbon embodiment of a product, not just whether it's from the dollar store and it's cheaper, but rather who, where, what was the inherent expense in creating that, how long will it last, etc. So it's all of those very complicated layers, and so that's what calculators can help reduce appraising those complex layers by dumbing it down a little bit, but dumbing it down to a complex equation. So it's a shame we're on such a linear mercantile world at the moment that needs shaking up, and it needs to be disrupted.
So we're just a minute before 8, as it's been fantastic conversation. Does any go around the room, so to speak, and any parting comments or anything like that?
I saw Kelsey.
Can I just say something about the textiles? I don't have much to say about toxic paint and like all that part, but for us, we get a lot of worn down costumes, which now we've started putting them, because they're all very plain, right? So they wear them out to make them look super used. And then they also do bloody costumes. So we've actually made bins of all these different types because they're so generic, right? They just got blood on them or they've been worn out. So now costumes have been coming to take them, and it's awesome. So they're actually being reused instead of having to be recycled.
Great. Sorry, I interrupted you, Marion, and you were going to go around the room here with.
Well, no, you can do that too. I just want to be like, we should kind of wrap this up. So I just want to give everyone a chance to any parting comments.
Chris, shall we go that circle if you don't mind, Chris? Parting words and summary.
For sure, yeah. It's just been wonderful to learn all the initiatives that are actually working, and I would love Urban Jacks in Los Angeles. I don't know if that's ever an idea, but we would love to see something better with the lumber that we see come through our doors. But I also echo a lot of Kelsey's comments, because we're in the same camp dealing with a lot of the same things. One of the directions we're going is trying to promote the use of websites to donate items and share items. And so the software technology we've adopted is PropCart, which is a prop rental e-commerce site for prop rental houses, and we reskinned it for donations, but you could also sell or rent things through our site. But we also want to share it with and get shows to adopt it so that they could share assets amongst themselves within a studio or with another startup show, and to be able to recirculate their own resources before they even get to us. Because one of our catchphrases is, after you've done your best, we'll do the rest. But if we can get the recent users to connect with the next users before it even needs to come to us, that's even better scenario. So we're hoping to promote the adoption of the donation website and the use of PropCart.
Great idea, excellent idea. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Now we're going to go on to Kelsey again. If you have anything more to add, Kelsey.
Yeah, thanks for having Keep It Green. Yeah, I know a lot of the people here, and it's great working together and collaborating and learning. And but yeah, for us, we use, just to feed off Chris a bit, like we use a lot of the Facebook groups for like caution departments. They let us join, and same with the set deck department. So like certain things that we get in, we'll actually share to those groups. We have our material reuse group that we post anything large on. So if you ever need to like have a look for desks or anything, you just have a look at that group. If it's deleted, it's gone. But yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kelsey. Aaron, please, if you have any parting words.
Well, thank you very, very much for having us as well. I think it's super inspirational to be speaking with this group. And I think that the most important thing I can do, as I'll share my screen in a moment here to show you about the impact that we've made. We are new to the market, and we are expanding to other areas like California and Ontario. And I will share with you the impact that we have made since coming to the market with your help in the past few months. So over 54,000 kilos of CO2 has been reduced just by diverting your wood into this bin for wood waste rather than mixed waste. Our process has been in development for years out of different countries and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to work together, it's really easy. Just reach out or talk to anyone on the panel, because all of us are going to be working together more next week. And I have some really fantastic appreciation for a lot of the people. I just looked at the participant list. So each of you, there's at least 15 of you I know, and that leaves 60 more that I would love to get to know by next year. So reach out, Aaron@urbanjacks.ca. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Aaron. So we have Kelly, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us at Circular Partners in Viking Recycling join today. I think we got to keep up the momentum. We're coming at this from, like front lines, hands-on. The group here that is represented on this panel, we're on the front lines, but we do need to work with and come from the top down as well. We need to, involve our governments. We need to go after the tops of the organizations that make the decisions. We need to push them on their sustainability. If they're not listing it on their websites, we need to engage them more in backing those claims if they do list sustainability claims on their websites. I believe there's a lot of room for the film industry, from what I see, to adopt new practices. I was a little bit surprised in somewhat, because every time I think about California, I think about avocado salads and everybody keeping the world green. So I'm just thinking that there should be a lot more done, more planning, and more resources kept to be reused over and over. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you, Kelly. So Joe, I'd love if you could wrap up the perspective from the floor and how you feel about what's been discussed tonight.
Well, it's it's been very inspiring. I feel a little bit like Milli Vanilli, a bit of a fraud compared to some of the work that that people here are doing. But I just want to say thank you for having me. It's inspired me to do better, and already I've started some conversations with Kelly, like maybe being part of a pilot project. So, and thank you for all the people that attended, because I think together we can inspire each other to do better.
Thank you, Joe. Marion, I want to thank you. I'm going to leave the wrap up to you, and I appreciate very much this opportunity.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much to all of you, all the entire panel, including you, moderator Laura, for taking part in this. It's of your time, your bandwidth. Everyone has packed bandwidth, and it's fantastic that you the time to be with us today, and also the preparatory conversations we had. So highly important, and thank you so much for all the expertise you brought to this. And I also want to thank DGC, National DGC, and Marwa Sanabdu, and Giacomo Beltrami, and the National Sustainability Committee, and also the sustainable art reps from the DGC, because we all sort of talked about what this panel would be. And also, just a note, we're hoping to have another one, a third webinar in September sometime, maybe, hopefully, possibly connected to SPF 24. And the idea that it would be probably a cross-border group of production designers kind of talking about, again, design circularity and kind of pushing the green dial forward. So that's TBC, but stay tuned and we'll let you know about it if it's going to happen. We know where you are. We'll send you emails. So anyway, thanks again, everyone. And that's it. And it's been a great session. And I hope to see you at the calculator demo tomorrow, I guess. Okay. Thanks again.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.